Donald Trump, the U.S. President, delivered what's been called a historic speech in the Israeli Knesset. He expressed his strong support for the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. His main message, Trump called Benjamin Netanyahu one of the great wartime presidents. But then he did something really, really strange. Benjamin Netanyahu was, of course, on trial for fraud, breach of trust, and corruption. He then urged the Israeli president, Isaac Herzog, to pardon him.
Hey, I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon? Give him a pardon. Come on. By the way, that was not in the speech, as you probably know. But I happen to like this gentleman right over here, and it just seems to make so much sense. You know, whether we like it or not, this has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. This has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. And cigars and champagne, who the hell cares about that?
Cigars and champagne, the apparent code words allegedly used, as stated in Israeli court papers, the code words Benjamin Netanyahu used to talk about monetary and other gifts. But also happening at the same time was the exchange of prisoners and hostages. Also, a treaty signed between Middle Eastern leaders. But now that we have a ceasefire in Gaza, what now happens for not only Gazans, people living in the West Bank, Palestinians in general? Joined now on the line by Ofer Neiman, who is a member of Israelis Against Apartheid. Maybe I can start with your initial reaction to Donald Trump in the Israeli Knesset calling on the Israeli president to pardon Benjamin Netanyahu, who faces quite serious corruption charges, and if found guilty, faces some jail time. Ofer, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Well, I mean, even if it does happen eventually in Israel, we should remember the broad picture. Israel has committed a genocide in Gaza. Netanyahu is a genocider. Regardless of what the Israeli president does about Netanyahu's corruption trial, Netanyahu should be put on trial internationally for genocide. That's my bottom line from all of this.
Yeah, those ICC arrest warrants still stand. But now, do we call it a peace deal or do we call it a ceasefire? The cessation of IDF bombing in particularly the Gaza Strip, but at the same time, we still see reports of Israeli-backed militias that have now engaged in reports of journalists being shot and attacked, reports of aid being hijacked. What is the situation in Gaza at the moment?
Well, it's certainly not a peace deal. Israel is still occupying parts of Gaza. Israel is holding and torturing Palestinian detainees, some of them minors, some being held without trial. And Israel will try to prevent the reconstruction of Gaza. Furthermore, as you just noted, Israel is encouraging, arming various Palestinian militias whose role has been to terrorize the Palestinian population throughout this genocide. So it's certainly not a peace deal, and I don't think it's a ceasefire. Perhaps it's a new phase. Perhaps we're not going to see these mass Israeli bombings, but Israel is still hell-bent on trying to ethnically cleanse Gaza by making it unlivable.
Internal Israeli opposition over the last 2 years has been, well, we won't get hostages back if the bombing continues. Public support, though, has still been quite strong for the war in Gaza. But now that was, but what has been almost the opposition to that, the internal opposition, well, it doesn't make sense. If you're going to continue bombing, they're not going to release hostages. Now that hostages have been released, what is the Israeli sentiment, the broader public sentiment, when it still comes to occupation of the West Bank and still military occupation of at least more than half of Gaza?
Well, I mean, the Israeli right wing, the hardcore right wing, are disappointed because their vision has been driving out the Palestinians and resettling Gaza. Mainstream media and the government are trying to frame this as some sort of achievement for Israel, manufacture consent for the whole thing. But I think that lots of Israelis are not buying it. They have questions. They're thinking this deal could have been reached long ago. And among the liberals here, liberal Zionists, unfortunately, while an overwhelming majority has been in favor of a deal and willing to support an end of the war, there is an underlying racist mentality among the liberals here too. And many of them, for example, the pilots who have been slaughtering the children of Gaza, have taken part in the war to the very last minute. So I think overall, in spite of attempts to frame this as an achievement for Israel, I think there is a great deal of confusion going forward among many Israelis.
I've been reading a bit over the last while of an intensified conscientious objector campaign in young people refusing to enlist in or be conscripted within the Israeli Defense Force. Tell me a little bit about this campaign. Is it a growing anti-war sentiment or anti-occupation settlement? What has the last, say, 6 months meant, particularly for younger Israelis?
Well, it's not a mass movement. There is a small movement of conscientious, courageous, young 18, 19-year-old men and women here who are refusing to enlist because of the crimes that Israel is committing. I would say that this movement is now growing to some extent, certainly in comparison to late 2023, when it was much harder to voice opposition to Israeli actions. But this in itself, over the years, we've had surges of refusal, but never a mass movement. So I think it's a movement to be respected, but not a movement that is about to bring about change here. And overall, opposition within Israel is rather weak. There is growing support, perhaps growing sympathy for the plight of Palestinians, but when it comes to hardcore opposition to the tenets of apartheid and colonialism here, I think it's only a minority, and that's why we need a global campaign such as the BDS movement, and we need accountability, for example, from the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and we need tough sanctions on Israel, especially banning Israel from UEFA and FIFA and the Olympics.
Ofer Neiman, really appreciate your time, member of Israelis Against Apartheid, speaking to us from Jerusalem.